this lesson is about the geology of the Rogue Valley, and what we are focusing on in this lesson is the idea of when are we. So when are we in geologic time? And so how this will work is the students are going to discuss what geology is. So do they know anything about geology? Have they learned anything from school about geology? And so have the students kind of talk about what they already know, and then they're going to go through and think of the three different types of rocks that are present in geology. So sedimentary rocks, metamorphic rocks, and igneous rocks. And so have the students discuss what each of those rocks, how they were formed. And so what's going to happen next is you're going to split the students into three different groups. And so each of these groups is going to be assigned a different type of rock. So one is metamorphic, igneous, and sedimentary. And so those groups are going to come up with a catchphrase and emotion for each of their rocks and how they were formed. So for example, sedimentary rocks were formed by the accumulation of sediment and particles. So you could have the students be like, mine would be their motion. And so for that motion and the catchphrase that they come up with, I'm going to read a story to them about the history of the geology in the Rogue Valley and how these mountain ranges were formed. And every time I say that type of rock that they have, that their group is assigned to, they're going to do that motion and that catchphrase. So it's going to be a very interactive story that I'm reading to them. And so have the students be paying very close attention to what you're saying, because they want to listen to the history of the Rogue Valley, but also be listening to when you say that catchphrase. So I'm going to go ahead and read the story of the geologic formation of this area. This area looked very different millions of years ago, before these mountain ranges were formed. We are standing in a very unique area where multiple mountain ranges converge, the Cascades and the Klamath. This area has a very unique geology that makes for a unique combination of animals and plants in the area. The two mountain ranges create an area made up of sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous rocks. A sedimentary rock is formed by the accumulation of small particles and particles on the floor of oceans or other bodies of water. Metamorphic rocks are formed when rocks are subjected to high heat and high pressure. Igneous rocks are formed when magma or lava is cooled and then becomes solid. Between 165 and 180 million years ago, a chain of islands that were located on the Juan de Fuca Plate submerged under the North American Plate. The islands were scraped off onto the North American Plate, which formed the Klamath Mountain Ranges, which is made of metamorphic rock. Around 160 million years ago, magma snuck into these metamorphic rocks and cooled below the surface. This formed igneous rocks below the surface. Over time, the layer of metamorphic rock eroded away, leaving some of the igneous rock exposed. Mount Ashland is an example of this exposed igneous rock. Then about 75 to 100 million years ago, while dinosaurs still roamed the shore, sediments began to build up on the ocean floor. And then about 35 to 40 million years ago, the dinosaurs has gone extinct, and rivers deposited more layers of sediment, which built up to become sedimentary rock. And then between 25 and 35 million years ago, volcanic ash and lava covered the land. Magma began to squeeze up through the cracks in the surface, creating more igneous rock. And then over time, erosion created the land that we're standing on today, containing metamorphic, igneous, and sedimentary rocks. And so then after that story, you can have the students look around and see the mountain ranges that are all around us, and also they probably have seen Pilot Rock as they were coming up and they drove past a Grizzly Peak sign, and have them start to think about how those different mountain ranges and different mountain peaks have been formed. So the second part of the geology lesson is going to be for students to have some time to explore the geology of Willow-Witt Ranch. And so to do this, they're first going to be shown a collection of special rocks that have been gathered from this geologic area, and some of them might be a little bit more rare. So there'll be rocks that students haven't been able to find while out here exploring. And so they'll have some time to look at each of these rocks and discuss with the group whether they think it's sedimentary, metamorphic, or igneous rock. And then once they have figured that out and kind of gotten an idea of how they can tell what type of rock is which, they'll be split into groups of two, so they'll have a partner, and they'll be able to go out and explore this rocky outcrop area that's here. And so they can go and find a rock that's maybe interesting to them, that they're intrigued by, and they can go and they can look at the rock and see how it feels, how it looks, and come up with an idea of how they think it was formed. And so then once we're all done, the group will come together and they'll be able to share what type of rock they found and how they knew. And so the students are getting a chance to get some hands-on experience looking at the geology of the area and being able to distinguish the 3 different types of rocks that they learned about in the beginning. So for this section of geology, students are going to be learning how to use a map and identify key features on a map. And so to get started with this activity, the students will be sitting in one group and they will be shown a map that was given to us by Len Eisenberg. And so this map shows the different geologic features of the area. And so, for example, Grizzly Peak and Mount Ashland, and how these geologic formations were formed and what types of rocks that they're made of. So together as a group, we'll review how this area was created and then have them have visual representations so they're able to see how it was formed. And so from here, the students will be split into partners, and each partner group will be given a map of Ashland. And so they will explain to them how to use the map. So how to use a key, how to identify important features that are on the map. So you can have them go through once they've learned these skills and try to find some place on the map that they may know of. So maybe have them try to find their school or their house or a park that they usually go to. And so once the students are familiar with using a map, you'll have them go through and try to find some geologic features on the map. So maybe some peaks that they're familiar with or that we've talked about in class today. And so once they found some of those peaks, have them go through and review how those peaks were formed and the geology of this area. Once again, have them do a little review with their partner. And so once they found a peak that they think that they can explain to the group, you'll have the group get together and they'll be able to share that piece of geologic formation that they found and review how that peak was formed. And so once the students have done that and they're familiar with how to use a map and again have reviewed the geology of the area, we're going to end with their performance activity. And so this activity is a culmination of everything they've learned today. So reviewing the 3 different types of rocks that they've learned about and also reviewing the geologic history of this area. So having them understand the concept of when are we in geologic time. And so for this performance activity, the students will be split in half, so into 2 different groups, and they'll have to come up with some kind of performance to convey to the other group and to the teacher that they know about the geologic history of this area. And so they can do this in multiple ways. They can be creative with it. They can do a skit, they can do a creative writing, they can do a journal entry, they can do a poem, anything that their group wants to do. And so once they've done this and they think they have a solid performance to give to the group, they're going to come together and one group will go and do their performance of how this area was formed, and the other group is going to give them positive feedback of things that they really enjoyed and things that they maybe learned from the other group, and then maybe talk about some things that they missed if the group noticed that they missed, but keeping a positive atmosphere. And then the other group will go and the same thing will happen, and then you'll come together and then just do a general review of the geology of this area and ask them if they have any questions about different peaks that were formed here or any rocks that maybe they saw today that they want to have more of a discussion about. And so that will be the end of the geology lesson.